I want now to address the issue of relationships. Hugely important. They are everywhere, obviously. I don't have to articulate that. But the concept of how relationships break and how to put them back together again. I've met so many situations where relationships have broken and they remain broken. So what we're going to do in this video session is divided into three. The first bit is going to be about how relationships work and how they break down, and the last two sections are going to be about how to repair them. So Bruce Tuckman, basically he describes a series of stages that we go through in relationships, and the C cycle largely follows that. But we kick off with what's called the forming stage, the coming together bit, then the storming stage, and the more crossover and interaction there is, the more storming is going to happen at some point. Because when you've got two different systems coming together, there's inevitable conflict. You can't help it because these two systems, people, whatever, see things differently. So forming, storming, falling out. Okay, again, a natural consequence of the storming. But then the major issue and the most important aspect of these cycles is reforming. How do you get back together again? And the ability to work through the fallout and come to reforming is a maturing stage. And that's really important for any group of people or whatever to be able to work through this stuff and to move from the reforming to the performing stage, and ultimately to be able to celebrate that whole cycle. And this is really important stuff. Okay, so that's the Bruce Tuckman model. Now on to the C cycle. We see here this diagram, this outline, and we begin to populate this by having the first stage, which is one of coexistence. Yeah, and this is a him and her scenario. And this couple are looking at one another across a crowded room, if you like. They're coexisting at this stage, but they're thinking about engaging with one another more fully. And then there's a stage of potentially backing off a bit and thinking about it, but then saying, okay, let's get closer. And so here we have a situation where both are moving closer, but there's a line that you can see, and the line has not been crossed here. So we've gone from coexist to converge. And now, as the line is crossed, we get to this conflict stage that we are talking about, previously described in the war zone, and here conflict stroke cancel, where there is the potential for cancelling one another out, and various stages as defined beforehand, in which you neutralize one another, or where you stay competitive, or where you complement one another. Okay, so we're looking at expanding on this whole process. And if one or other crosses the line, moves too far in this situation, here we have the guy getting too close to the woman, she's turning away. Okay, so he's crossed the line, she's backed off. And then potentially there's a stage of the chase where he keeps on pursuing across the line inappropriately. Now, if he's wise, he will concede, appreciate that he's got it wrong, and begin to turn round and back off. If he does that, that situation may pertain and continue. But on the other hand, she might decide, I'm still interested, and he's now backed off. Then there is the stage of conversation. If he then says, okay, I'm going to try again, but this time I'm going to be wiser, and she's still interested, there's a coming together, but this approach avoidance that I was talking about previously, because once bitten, twice shy. Okay, so there's interaction going on, each testing the other out in that particular situation of converse, talking to one another. If there's a good conversation and it works out well, then that's fine. But there may be a situation that pertains, in particular when a couple have got married, when the guy classically misses out on the conversation, doesn't win in that regard, and then disappears into his own cave and goes down into his shed, if you like. And having done that, then the wife, the partner, often chases the husband, partner, into that cave, and he locks himself down and she's desperately beating on the door saying, come out and talk to me. And that can create a situation which is not resolved either. So when there is this lack of resolution, what can happen is a Cold War. So he stays locked away in his cave, and she turns away and disappears into her world. And so there's a huge gap. And so you're left then with this stage of fallout. And the question then is, when people have had this distance from one another for some time, how do you make up? And this is the really important element, how to make up when there is this distance. Because relatively few people know how to do this. That's my experience at any rate. I had to learn about this. My own family will have its tactics, your family will have its tactics. Some actually don't do anything about it, stays unresolved, and then they come back together as though nothing had happened. But then it remains under the surface. But what is really necessary, ideally, is to be able to work it through, as it's called. Because often there is a fear of trying to work it through, because people don't know how to do it. They say, if I go and try and work this through, what's going to happen? Yeah, I'm going to get it wrong, I'm going to go over the top, I'm going to be completely inappropriate in the way I say it, it's going to make things worse. They're going to come back to me, I'm going to lose the relationship, I'm going to lose my job, whatever. There are loads and loads of fears here in terms of working stuff through. So in this diagram, you see that there's a sort of a seesaw effect, and then this big pyramid and down the other side. Effectively, what happens so often is one or other partner says, I need to talk this through. But the fear comes in of the very things that I've just mentioned, and say, oh, I can't do that because it's going to all become a mess. It's going to get worse. And so it seesaws up and down. I'm going to do it, back off. I'll wait for a better time, etc. But when it comes to the point of actually doing it, you have to feel the fear and do it anyway. Because if you're hoping for a situation that is free of fear, you're not likely to get that. So there's a sense of having to, as I've just said, feel the fear and do it anyway. And at that stage, what happens to the fear? Does it just dissipate? No, it doesn't. It gets much worse. And that's what the big pyramid is about, having to work through that. And you are hoping that you're going to get a good outcome, but it's not guaranteed. But there's a way that is most likely to get a good outcome, and it's this. It's the relationship issue, relationship sandwich.